When it comes to April Fools, there are a ton of false rumors and stories and hoaxes. Some of them can be harmless and light-hearted, while others can be dark and offensive and straight up annoying and in bad taste. But what I wanted to discuss today was how April Fools became a reality for Dragon Ball fans. So before we begin, I ask that you smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. It's a massive help in supporting the growth of this channel. So let's begin. Now, growing up as a wee young lad, when the internet was still fairly new to me, I used to believe a lot of things, if not everything that I saw online. And as a gamer who got into a lot of franchises and series, when I finished with a particular game or when I was into something, I'd constantly search online for news and updates regarding them. Keep in mind I was like 10 or something at the time, so this was a long time ago, so don't be too harsh and don't clown on me in the comments. But for example, if I was into something that I completed, like if I was into a game, I would always try and seek out a sequel to said game, and search for it online. And back in the day, the talk of the town when it came to Dragon Ball games was Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3. In fact, it's been the talk of the town for at least the last 15 years or so. This game still holds the reputation as being the greatest Dragon Ball game of all time. It's the holy grail, And once we moved on to the PS3 and Xbox 360 generation, people were eager and excited for a fourth entry in the series. But we never really got a direct sequel to Budokai Tenkaichi 3. We did get Raging Blast 1 and 2, Dragon Ball Raging Blast, those games, which were spiritual successors to it, and it defined that generation for Dragon Ball games, in my opinion. But people never really looked at them in the same light, for some reason, I don't know why. The gameplay and mechanics were very similar, and the engines were similar, and the combos and all were similar, but people didn't really see them in the same light for some reason. There was always comparisons to them, but a lot of old school Dragon Ball gamers weren't really feeling the Raging Blast games for some reason. They wanted the Budokai Tenkaichi games. And, it was either that or nothing. Personally though, I love the Raging Blast games. I think people hate on them too much, and it's unfair, but I can kinda also see why, just because I was in the middle of both eras at the time. And then to further spit on the legacy of Budokai Tenkaichi, they released Dragon Ball Z Ultimate Tenkaichi, which was just ultimate trash. I truly feel like they used that name specifically because they knew what people wanted, and they saw this as an opportunity to bait us and get a nice cash grab, riding on the legacy of Budokai Tenkaichi 3. Needless to say though, I didn't like this game. Years went by and you'd see so many stories and rumors. I actually believed some of them too when I was young, because I saw these fan-made trailers and these cover arts, and a lot of them looked very convincing and legit, or at least convincing enough for 10-year-old plays. But when I had my PS3 and my PS2 was sold without my permission, I was desperately looking for some way to play my favorite PS2 classics. So I'd constantly search far and wide in hopes that they made some of these games for PS3 or something like that. And sure enough, I was actually successful in some cases. I was really overjoyed when I came across the HD remaster of the Jak and Daxter trilogy. I mean, I still in fact have my copy of that to this day. So it gave me hope for other games, that more would come, more games would follow suit. And, I got the God of War trilogy as well. I mean, not the God of War trilogy, sorry, the God of War 1 and 2 and the PSP games, they both got HD collections. And, the Devil May Cry titles were also something that I picked up as well. And I constantly looked around for remasters and sequels for PS2 games, like Sonic and Mortal Kombat, just to name a couple. The concept of emulators wasn't really something that I knew about or heard of at the time, so I was pretty sad and desperate. And then, you know, one day on my birthday, I was browsing through a game store randomly where I found the Dragon Ball Z Budokai HD collection. By complete chance, I didn't know that this existed. I had no idea of its existence. I just found it. This was missing Budokai 2, but Budokai 1 and 3 were enough for me to say shut up and take my money. And I really enjoyed it. I didn't own these games growing up, but I did play them extensively. I told the crazy story of how the first Dragon Ball game was actually a game that I played while I was in the hospital, dying and stuff like that. That was Budokai 1, and then Budokai 3 I actually never played, but I did play Dragon Ball Z Infinite World, which came out after Budokai 3 and is a sequel to Budokai 3, and those games are like very identical. It's hard to tell them apart, especially in terms of graphics, visuals and all that. So this kind of filled the void for me somewhat. So I was really satisfied, but what this did was gave me some hope that one day we would get at least a remaster of Budokai Tenkaichi 3. That was the one that everyone wanted and was waiting for, but it just never happened. Years went by and we got games like Xenoverse, Kakarot, Fighters over the last decade to fill the void, and Budokai Tenkaichi kind of faded away. It wasn't forgotten or anything like that, but people still held it in high regard. It was just looked at as being a thing of the past, a well-respected legend. You'd get the yearly April Fool's stories now and again, and rumors and fake cover art still, but other than that, there wasn't really a peak of there being a remaster or remake of Budokai Tenkaichi. But what happened next was something that absolutely nobody saw coming, and it took people's wishes even further beyond. Completely out of nowhere, a teaser trailer of what started out looking like a remaster or remake of the Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi games quickly transitioned into modern footage of Goku transforming and going Super Saiyan Blue, a form that wasn't in those games. And what they told us is that the next generation of Budokai Tenkaichi was coming. This was official, this wasn't a hoax. Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 4 was real, and it was going to happen and happen soon. After people begging for them to just remaster Tenkaichi 3, these people just said, nah, I'll do you one better, and they gave us a sequel instead. A direct sequel to the original Budokai Tenkaichi games. And most people gave up on this idea of a sequel happening, so at the very least, what we hoped for was even a port. But what we ended up getting was something that was so much more, and we ended up being fed amazingly. And it honestly took me a while to process this, because for me, I thought that this era of Dragon Ball games was a thing of the past. It almost felt too good to be true, and many of us were overjoyed and had thousands of memories and flashbacks flowing through our minds. The passion never really went away. Behind the fan-made arts and fake stories showed the passion of Dragon Ball fans, and I think this trailer felt like a reward for having that passion. You know, I'd like to think that April Fools played a role in this. And as time passed, we'd get more screenshots and trailers, and the game would eventually be officially named Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, a nod to the names of the Budokai Tenkaichi games in Japan, which were known as the Sparking series, bringing Eastern and Western audiences together and uniting us through our love of these games. But did you know that we did actually get a sequel to Budokai Tenkaichi 3 before this, called Dragon Ball Z Tenkaichi Tag Team? You can find out more about that on the video to the left. while you can learn more about the ultimate trash that is Ultimate Tenkaichi on the right. Thanks for watching, I'll see you there. Peace.